Hello, welcome back. This is part 8 of my build log of the Trumpeter 1 to 200 scale model of the Titanic. Got a bit of a mishmash video today because there's been lots of things that I've been working on. I'm going to talk a little bit about the lifeboats and how I've painted and decorated those. I'm going to talk some more about portholes because I really haven't covered them enough. And also I'm going to talk a little bit about how I've decorated my stand because I wanted it to look a little bit less plastic than it did when it arrived. So 3 things to cover, so without any further ado, I will crack on. So first off, I'll talk about the lifeboats. This kit is actually a little bit strange. It'll get some unbelievably obscure details correct, but then it does have some fairly glaring obvious errors as well, and one of the errors is in the lifeboats. The actual kit itself doesn't come with any lifeboat covers, and obviously the vast majority of the lifeboats, except for the 25-foot cutters, they'll all have been covered. So that's a little bit strange. It's not an issue for me because the Pontos kit comes with photo etch lifeboat covers which I can use, but it just seems like a really odd thing to miss out. The other slight issue with the kit is that Titanic had 20 lifeboats, obviously. There were 14 of the 30-foot boats, there were 2 25-foot cutters, and there were 4 collapsible boats called Engleharts. And the boat which is just being zoomed in on the screen now, that's one of the Engleharts. But for some reason the kit only comes with 2, not 4. And I don't really know why. I think it must just be an error. There's a number of ways around this. I know a lot of people have been writing off the Trumpeter and they've been sending out replacement sprues with those boats on, so you can get them that way. I have tried contacting Trumpeter, but they've never got back to me, and I'm sure if I kept chasing I would get through in the end. But I think what I'm going to do instead is I've always quite fancied trying casting of things, so I'm going to use one of the Englehart boats that I have to make a mould, and then I'll cast another couple out of that. So I'll show that in a later video when I get round to doing it. For now, I have prepared all of my lifeboats, and the first thing that I did after removing them from the sprues and sanding down the injection lines was to brush paint them. The reason I chose to brush paint over spray painting was because I quite like the brush stroke lines that you get on anything that is meant to look wooden, because I think as long as you do the brush strokes in the right direction, it sort of adds that slight wooden graining effect, which I think looks quite good. I mean, you know, in reality these boats are so small that the likelihood of this being noticed is fairly minimal, but even so, it's a nice little addition, and it's something that I will notice, and when the model's all finished, hopefully that'll sort of, you know, make it pop that a little bit better. The next bit of work I'm doing will involve quite a lot of photo etch stuff, so I thought it'd be worth talking through the products that I've bought for the photo etch. The first is this. This is a really nice quality CA glue. CA super glue is actually super glue, same thing. What I tend to find is the issue with normal super glue is that it dries very hard, and it seems to, if it ever does fail, it seems to crack rather than, you know, doing anything else. It's almost like a fatigue crack. Whereas this stuff has a slight sort of flexible component built into it. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but what it means is it just makes it slightly more able to withstand bumps and knocks, things that might cause standard super glue to fail. Particularly useful on my model, where I am going to be lifting it up and putting it down and stuff, and so parts are going to be flexing and so on, you know, so that should be quite useful. The next thing is this. This is called Metal Prep 4K, and this is useful because it's very difficult to paint on top of photo etch parts, just because the paint just doesn't bond. You don't get a strong enough bond, and you'll find that after a time the paint will chip off quite easily. So by using this as a sort of primer, your paint will stick on much better. And the last thing is this. I won't be using this yet, but when I get into the more sort of model-y parts of the actual model, I use this quite a lot. This is a photo etch bending tool, and that's useful for getting really nice straight bends on all of your parts. So for now, this is the only sheet of photo etch that I actually need to work with, and that's because it has the lifeboat covers and also the little flags that go on the ends of the lifeboats, the white star flags. So to start with, I prepared this sheet by using the Metal Prep 4K, and I painted that on both sides, and then I went on and spray painted the entire sheet. After that, I used a very, very fine brass bar to paint the white star flags in both gloss red and matte black. This was really, really fiddly and took a hell of a lot of time. The next thing that I've done on this same sheet of photo etch is to put a bit of weathering on the lifeboat covers. To achieve this, I have used a very, very dry brush to add just a tiny little bit of colour, and then I've distributed that colour around with a cotton bud, which has just got a tiny, tiny little bit of terps dipped on it, so it sort of liquefies the paint. The effect I'm going for here is a just slightly off-white greyish kind of colour, partly to give the effect of the canvas cover being taut in some places and slack in other places, but also just to give a little bit of scenic interest. You know, I don't believe for a second that the Titanic's lifeboat covers will have been absolutely clean. You know, all sorts of things will have happened. Rain will have gathered in places and birds will have done their business on them and that sort of thing, so they won't have been completely clean. And I think the effect I've got looks really nice, and it'll give a little bit more scenic interest to the lifeboats on the model, which will otherwise look quite similar along the length. The only other work I've completed on the lifeboat so far is the interior of the 25-foot cutters. These are the only boats that would have been uncovered on the whole ship, and they were designed to be the sort of emergency response boats. If for any reason, I don't know, a boat was needed at short notice, say a passenger fell overboard or whatever, these boats were always kept ready. In reality, when the ship was at open sea, these would have been winched out over the side of the ship to make lowering an even quicker process. I think this is going to have to be one of the areas where I make a bit of a concession, knowing that my model is a radio control model. I think having a 1 to 200 scale model boat hanging out over the side of my model is just begging for it to be ripped off or damaged in some way. So I'm not going to have my boats hanging out over the side, but they will be uncovered, unlike the rest of the lifeboats. You can really see the detail you can get with the photo etch. You know, things like the duck boards and the oars you get in the Pontos kit are just they just look so good. So I'm really happy with how these have turned out actually. The next thing I'm going to talk about in this video is the 19 by 24 inch portholes, and namely the portholes on the sea deck bulkhead. For some reason in this kit, they're not done correctly. If you see this photo, the sort of extruded parts coming out of the bulkhead are quite wrong. They should be portholes, and I don't quite know why this model's got it wrong. My suspicion is that this is just a mistake when they were mocking up this model on CAD, because if you actually look at the shape, that is exactly the right shape that the portholes should be, but they should just be cut into the part rather than extruded out. Anyway, some people I know are happy to live with it. I'm not really, so I'm going to do something about it. So the first thing I did was to drill out these holes with a 1mm drill bit, and then after that pull them out to the final size and sand down accordingly. Now you could leave it there, to be honest, and you'd be in a much better place than you started with, but I quite like the sort of squared off look that these portholes had, and I quite like to recreate that if I can, especially in somewhere which is going to be as visible as the sea deck bulkhead. So you can get photo etch editions for the model online, and I'll put in the description below where I found this particular one, but this is a photo etch part which comes with enough portholes to do all of these across the entire model. As you can see, they are unbelievably tiny and they're very fragile, and I mean, this is the fiddliest job I have done on the model to date by a long way, and it took a long time to sort of get them accurate, because you're having to get the sort of, I guess for want of a better word, the yaw and the pitch and the roll of the porthole right, otherwise it's going to look rubbish. So what I did was I used a piece of blue tack in the back of the porthole and then pressed down the brass photo etched part with a drill bit and used the drill bit to manipulate the part until I had it exactly as I wanted it. That I then used a brass bar with a little bit of CA glue to bond the part in place. Then I removed the blue tack and added a little more CA glue on the other side to properly cement the part in place. I've got to say, it's quite annoying really, because my original plan was to only do those portholes on the sea deck bulkhead, but having seen how nicely they've turned out, I'm quite tempted to do them across the entirety of sea deck, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, is a huge amount of work. The last thing that I want to show you in today's video is how I've tried to prepare the stand, because I'm conscious that when it comes in the kit it just doesn't look all that great. So I've tried to use some iron-on veneer, which has certainly made it look a lot better than it did before. I'm still not convinced I'm going to use the stand, but for now I'm quite happy with the effect I've got. So to start with on this, I roughed up the surface with some really coarse sandpaper. I think it's about 40 grit. Using this iron-on veneer is a really simple process. Once you've got your part cut to shape, you just need to secure it with something like masking tape and then run the iron on the hottest setting over the top. Normally it's the cotton setting. Once you've done that, once you've got your parts secured, the instructions said to use a wooden block to rub over the top of the veneer to make sure that the glue was properly bonding. I didn't have a wooden block, so I used a tub of Carmex instead. Probably not the best idea in the world, but I mean, you know, it did the job. And so here we are, here's the stand as it is currently. I added some nice burgundy velvet because I thought that looks really quite nice, and also it'll stop the hull getting scratches. There's a bit more work to be done. I need to fill in some cracks, and I'd like to put a nice gloss varnish on to really make the teak look rich. And I've also got a really nice brass plaque that needs to go over the top. Like I say, I'm not certain I want to use this stand because in an ideal world I'd actually have a case for this model, but if I don't get around to doing a case, this stand looks a lot better than it used to. So that's it for this video. Thanks everyone for being patient while I got my house sorted out. I'm still not quite there yet, but I'm now at a point where I can devote a bit more time to hobbies and stuff. I don't have to be working on the house full time now, so I'm over the worst of it. Hopefully videos will start to get back to normality in the near future. But like I say, that's it for now. If you do have any comments or any questions about anything, please just whack them down below. If you enjoyed it, give us a like or maybe even subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.